Welcome to the roundtable discussion. As you've been following the videos this morning, the keynotes, and the fantastic kind of production values, I hope we can keep up the quality of content. I know my panel certainly can. We've got some great people. And our topic today is very relevant to the entire Domo story, which is the topic of curiosity and the future of data. I hope you saw the video series that we did. And in my role, I'm Donald Farmer, and I'm a consultant and an advisor to all sorts of investors and enterprises and vendors on data and analytics strategy. The whole purpose of curiosity is actually very important in my work because I think, as Josh said this morning, we used to talk in terms of business intelligence all about answers, and now we talk about questions. And really, the question is so much more important. I can present you with a sort of pre-canned set of answers, but if I can prompt new questions, then I'm really on the verge of helping you with that innovative breakthrough that'll make a big difference in your business. So to help us talk about that today, I've got some great panelists. I've got Fred Foos from Universal Music Group. We've got Gonzalo Alistair from Fuji Xerox Australia, who is joining us at a crazy time in the morning. So thank you so much, Gonzalo, for that. And Nigel Planet is also joining us from Australia. So he's also woken up at a crazy time to be with us today, and we really appreciate that. And Leslie Dempsey from Lazy Boy as well. And I think this is a fantastic panel of Domo customers to talk about this question of curiosity. Now, rather than kind of going around and introducing everybody one by one, I think I'd like to start with a kind of probing question, and we can learn something about people's roles and background, and we can learn something about their approaches to business and business intelligence from that. So let's start with Leslie, as she was the last on the list. Let's start with the last shall be first. Leslie, in your role at Lazy Boy, what role do you think curiosity plays in data analytics, and how have you seen that develop over the years?
For myself, when I first started my career, I really viewed data in a really one-dimensional way. And so as I started to grow over the years, I realized that without data, you can't celebrate performance milestones, you can't build a coaching culture. And behavioral coaching in my line of work is extraordinarily important. There's nothing that tops the list over behavioral coaching. And so it's really been exciting to see how our access to data has changed over the years as well with Lazy Boy. So seeing the way that people are able to progress in such a short amount of time when you use the inputs and the outputs, behavior and data, in order to really elevate them in their career. So it's always exciting to see someone become very successful by using data as a lever.
That's really interesting. And I love the fact that you raise the point about behavioral coaching. I mean, behavior is, in some ways, that's what we're trying to do. We're not just trying to give answers when we try to prompt questions. We're really talking about behavioral change. It's not, organizations are slow to change, and organizational behavior is slow to change. And the role of data and analytics, not just to do things better, but to enable us to do things differently with new behaviors, I think has been somewhat overlooked in the past. And I hope I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation about that. So Nigel, in Hobart, I believe, in Tasmania, what's a bit about your background, the role that you play, and the role of analytics, and in particular, perhaps the role of curiosity in your work today?
Yeah, thanks, Donald. It's early over here, so I may borrow some words, Leslie, that you've used just now. But look, we run agricultural assets for wholesale investors and institutional investors, and we run farms that are very complex in terms of data and information. And for us, the last 5 years has been an explosion of ag tech, they call it, so where we can go to find information, and both from a people perspective and also running our businesses and getting good outcomes, but also caring for our environments and using our resources wisely is probably so where we've been able to, so looking at bringing the data together to be able to, I guess, affect behaviours and change with our people and get better outcomes and keep them safer, but also use our resources that, are being in agriculture, becoming under the spotlight to use more efficiently and not waste. So data for us is something that has a long way to go, but there's a lot of technology there for us to do things better.
That's fascinating, and not just because my name is Farmer, but I have actually done a fair bit of work in agriculture in the past as well. And one of the things that always fascinated me about agriculture as a business is that, unlike, say, manufacturing, the relationship between inputs and outputs is actually very complex. And there's a whole lot that happens in agriculture that means there's not just a linear relationship between what you do and what your outcome is. And famously, you know, all farmers complain about harvests every year, but it is a much more complex, it's a dynamic biological process as opposed to a mechanic process. So, I mean, I absolutely appreciate the role of data and analytics in there. It's going to be critical, especially when you operate at scale. So yeah, I'm looking forward to your conversation. Thank you. Fred, I guess I should ask where you are, because we seem to know where everybody else is.
Yeah, so the biggest role I think that curiosity plays in, at least in my role, and for context, I run business intelligence at a massive record company. You know, where most of the staff are creatives, people who don't typically use data in their day-to-day. And so I think the most, you know, where curiosity has been so important is, you know, showing people, you know, just giving them something that they can work with, a new perspective on understanding, you know, how an artist is marketing themselves in, you know, in certain territories, or how certain, you know, how certain content is being consumed, which only, you know, which only then leads to even more and more questions. You know, how is TikTok now affecting the way we market music? How is, you know, how can we, you know, analyze what's happening with an artist in Southeast Asia and then globalize that marketing campaign, things like that, that really, you know, start with a data conversation, which is an entirely new way of thinking with a lot of these folks who don't typically use data in their day-to-day.
You know, this is really interesting to me, that you work with creatives, and a lot of the people that you're working with see themselves as being part of the creative business. One of the big changes I think I've seen in my career in business intelligence has been probably in the last 10 years, people have started to see analytics, data visualization, data science as almost like a creative experience in itself. And what I mean by that is, you know, the role of data visualization, the role of beautiful visualizations, the role of interactive graphics and interactive experiences. A lot of business intelligence experiences now feel much more like something that would have been created by the creative industry, rather than something that would have been kind of painfully technical a few years ago, maybe 10, 20 years ago. And that change, by the way, I think is extremely exciting. And it ties into this idea of curiosity and the need to kind of dig in a creative, innovative way. So yeah, that's going to be exciting. Gonzalo, you also are in Australia, so thank you for joining us at crazy in the morning. Can you tell us a little bit about your work and the role of curiosity and data analytics in yours?
Sure, no problems. Thank you for it, and thank you, Donald. So the role of analytics, the way I see it, it usually starts as a necessity to report. We're in a service industry. We assist customers as a technology partner, and one of the things that we have to constantly do is to report and provide value added to our customers. And so the data is the need to consume data that actually assist not only us, but also our partners, every one of our customers is always something that's been there. And as part of when you start the road of exploring how can you help your customers, then you start identifying also some opportunities to reduce the effort, for example, to assist your customer, identifying opportunities for your customers also to reduce the effort to provide the service, or to actually help them in their own industries as well. One of the things so when you start identifying opportunities, like, it also creates opportunities for yourself to say, okay, well, look, actually, what you're doing, we can actually help you as well in a different way, providing you a different service. And one of the things that we have seen in in my team is that it's when you start providing all those results, people start getting more and more interested. And not only the people that are in data analytics, actually, end users become actually more interested. Management, obviously, they're always wanting to understand, okay, well, what are the opportunities to reduce costs or to for sales opportunities? So you definitely start seeing how it expands, and everyone starts engaging you and they start asking you different questions. And sometimes when you start breaking down some of the silos, some of the data silos, you start helping them and start, look, this is what we have seen so far. That is in other areas we discovered this. Does that help you? And usually the answer is yes. Usually they say, oh, maybe, and they start working with it, and then you realize perhaps a couple of months later, well, actually, yes, we're using this new data set that you actually created for us. So you see that how this is a never-ending path, and actually once you start this road, there's no going back. People that you already discovered that there is a necessity that you tapped into that necessity that was probably dormant before, and now you say no, it's not going to stop.
That is fascinating. That this process, once you've uncorked the bottle, you can't get the genie back in. You know, people are waiting for this capability. And I guess in the past, people simply exported to Excel and did what they could. But now we have real tools that enable people to do their own analysis. And I've seen today the discussion of natural language tools, which may bring that to another level, make it even simpler for people to do some of that analytics. Leslie, I was wondering, when you were talking about behavioral change and listening to Gonzalo there, clearly, you know, when he opens these floodgates of consolidating the data silos, giving people the right tools, there's a significant behavioral change in his organization, which doesn't sound as if it was planned for. It sounds as if it was actually a kind of a surprise, maybe a good surprise, but a surprise. But do you feel that you can kind of plan for that behavioral change, and are there positive actions people can take to enable more curiosity?
Absolutely. I really think that it starts with just being supportive of people's curiosity and data. And that sounds really simple on the surface, but when you have multi-units the way that I do, and that is a very large team across a very large area, it's easy to sort of take those things for granted. And so really going in firsthand and having these conversations, in my case with leaders that manage quite a lot of business, it's just important to keep it front of mind and to always take it back to the behaviors. And for me, one thing that really stands out is what I see when we really tie in the data to what is someone's personal goal. You know, they have a personal goal for their lives, for themselves. And so we see the outputs, and we can start talking to them about, if you make the change here behaviorally, you can become this much more successful. This performance will lead to you being able to achieve your goal. And so really just making it an individualistic approach and really focusing on what we can help people accomplish in their career.
Wow, yeah. So you said two things there that really resonated with me immediately. One was that you're working with leaders who have I think by the nature of their role, have a wide range of questions that they have to deal with. But it's fascinating to me that leaders want to be engaged with the data rather than delegating that to somebody else. Go and do the analysis for me and come back to me with the results. They want to explore that. Then the other thing you said that really connected with me was this sense of understanding what people's personal ambitions are. That this, and I think this actually ties into what I was saying about the role of creatives and what Fred was saying, that, you know, it's not just a business function, it's a personal function. It's your fascination, it's your excitement and your engagement with the data that really matters to people nowadays. And the techniques and tools that we deliver to people have to engage with them on that personal level. Is that right? Is that...
Absolutely. That's 100% accurate. And, you know, when you think about, I also work with creatives as well. We have quite a lot of interior designers on our team. So they have a real passion for interior design and are extremely talented and creative, but they don't always share that same passion toward data when they first come on board with our company. But really helping people to understand the value of that is empowering to them, Because if they see a result and they know the very next person I speak to, I can do something differently that will impact my personal results, and then in turn, get me closer to my personal goals. I just think that it's a really powerful topic in general to be able to discuss with our leaders out in our stores at La-Z-Boy.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. Now, I just want to remind people who are listening that we have a chat window, of course, in Zoom, and people are able to ask questions if we can get to that towards the end of the session. So if you have questions, it would be great to ask them through that medium, and we'll have a look at them. Nigel, when we talk about this behavior change, agriculture has been going on for millions of years, if you like, or certainly hundreds of thousands of years. And I think it's fair to say that agriculture, in some ways, is actually quite a conservative business. There's a lot of practices which have been very well established, but there's also a lot of innovation that we're seeing. And if we think about the need to drive behavioral change, how much in your experience is data and analytics useful for driving that behavioral change? And perhaps, does it connect with people's personal experiences in the way that Leslie was suggesting that it does for her in her business?
I think there was certainly a gold nugget in that comment around how we utilize data and can use it in the future. I think, farming for the people, if I think about our critical teams on the ground that run the farms and get up and do the tough work in the early hours, much like we're doing now, it probably needs to be brought back to that personal goal piece. And initially, data may not be seen to be able to help them achieve that, but I think it's helping them realise that the visibility around what they're doing and the outcomes that it has. So to draw it back to what their personal goals actually are, and it might be actually making their things they find challenging easier. But also, I think there's an opportunity to really educate them on the outcomes of what they produce, decisions they make daily using that data, but also how it might help them grow their teams or attract talent, or if they're passionate about an environment.
Yeah, so there's some persuasion to be done in order to encourage people to actually dig into this. And
there's real opportunity.
Yeah, so it's not just a question of, well, here's the data, go play with it. You actually have to persuade them that this is something valuable to them in a personal way.
We've got a long journey, and some of it's driven by legislation, some of it's driven by reporting to our investors, but I think the biggest part is creating healthy, happy teams that are functioning really well, knowing what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Sounds simple when you say it like that. So thanks, Leslie, for that. That's a new goal for the day.
Well, it certainly sounds simple, but of course we know that the human aspect of any of our businesses is actually probably the most difficult part. I sometimes feel the technical aspect, getting the ones and zeros in the right order, is relatively straightforward compared to dealing with the people element. And Fred, I mean, to come back to you, in some ways, you started this chain of conversation with your comment about working with creatives. In your business, are the people who are working with data and analytics, do they see themselves as part of a creative business, and do they see this curiosity, this urge to investigate and innovate? Do they see that as part of, as being driven by or being related to the creative nature of the business they're in?
I think they definitely do. Like one of the first use cases that we had, and actually going off of something that Gonzalo said earlier, and that is that we had a lot of folks that were asking for information from our analyst teams, and we needed some sort of solution to automatically allow folks to self-serve some of this information. And as soon as we produced that, within maybe a month of using Domo, they this team that was asking for this information started not asking what, but why. And to the point where I had some folks, some executives come to me and start asking, well, why are people, consuming more music on, this service versus that service? How's the revenue model changing, our market share, and all these questions that are taking folks from, some level of curiosity of what's happening to how they can affect it and why things are happening.
Yeah, that why is actually really difficult to get into. It that requires curiosity, because it's not as if you can just look at the data and work out why. You need to be able to form hypotheses and test them and investigate them. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So we have a question, and I'd love to use this question actually for the next phase of this. And I think, Gonzalo, maybe you've got an opinion on this. The question is, what are some methodologies that you've used to encourage data curiosity and the use of data and analysis during the pandemic while people are working remotely? And Gonzalo, I ask you because you were actually talking about this transition from a kind of IT-driven centralized kind of attitude to data and analytics towards a more self-service, business user-driven form of analytics. So have you seen a significant change during the pandemic? And have you adapted your methods and your techniques for that?
Certainly. We so some of the things that we have had to do, well, it was in the beginning, it was relatively easy to have interactions, face-to-face interactions with business managers. Whenever you had the requirement to go, okay, well, look, a business manager would go and ask you, look, can you help me create a dashboard that helps me driving efficiencies and creating opportunities, reducing effort in my area. And before, it was very easy in a way to go and have the meeting with the stakeholders, with the managers. We actually have a set of questions that we need to continuously ask every single one of the stakeholders involved, like such as what are your key drivers, what do you think is driving performance. And then sometimes we will have to go and sit with the stakeholders and sometimes shadow what they do and how they produce the reports to understand certain things that are not documented anywhere. Some of the filters they apply, some of the criteria they use to really separate what adds value from what it doesn't. And being away from the end users, from the managers, from analysts, sometimes it definitely generates that sort of a gap that you have to fill sometimes. And one of the things that we have seen that we have to do is produce certain type of reports that allow you to understand, okay, well, are you in the right track? And sometimes you don't have the ability to see right on the spot what the challenges are. But when you start understanding, okay, well, the outputs indicate that, for example, you have the trend hasn't changed, for example, then you need to start going back to the roots, and they start going back, okay, well, what is exactly happening? Is there something that we are missing? So having to graph and having to capture those trends is critical when you don't have the ability to start day to day understanding, okay, well, tell me about your challenges. Tell me what's working, what's not working for you. So that I would say it's probably one of the key challenges. The same thing, for example, when I had to hire a new person, for example, in one of the areas to remotely manage a software for our customers. And during COVID, I was not able to, or none of the existing team members was able to start training side by side. So which is one, it was kind of very, very challenging. So definitely one of the things that we did is we started creating quickly a database that will allow us to understand, okay, well, how the training is going, what's the how you're going with every single one of the customers, the results, the temporary results during the transition. And you start seeing very, very good results in terms of well, when you see that the learning curve you're actually achieving the level of performance that you're expecting is really good. But sometimes we realize, okay, well, actually there's some things that are not moving, that are plateauing at that some point. Then you start saying, okay, well, what do we do? But before that, before COVID, we didn't have those indicators. So that's something that definitely helps. You have to improvise. You have to understand it, and being able to capture those trends while you're in this process is critical.
That's really important, I think. And one of the things that you mentioned there was this, people might not have the ability to necessarily dig in, but you have to kind of encourage them to develop that curiosity in order to understand what's going on. We have a couple of questions which I think are very related to that. And one of the questions from Kayla Logan is about how do you encourage staff that are normally uncomfortable with data and reports? I think it's fair to say that a lot of people are. All of those who didn't enjoy math at school are probably uncomfortable with data and reporting. How do you encourage them to get engaged? And Troy Carricker made a similar but different point about, they've been struggling to get departmental managers to use the information, to price this information that they're getting. And, I'm supposed to be asking the questions, not giving the answers, but it reminds me very much of something that Leslie said about connecting to people's personal ambitions and motivations and needs, and how do you engage this what could feel like an abstract world of data and reporting that people are uncomfortable with their personal needs and ambitions. And Nigel, you made a case that you've struggled in your work to get people interested and engaged with the data, and you need to kind of meet them where they are with data and analytics. Do you have any kind of guidance, any insight that you could share with people about how to do that in a practical terms, about how to get departmental managers and people more engaged with the data?
Yeah, it's probably off the back of what had to happen during COVID, and not we're very much a people-based industry that being around them and influencing in person, understanding goals and needs. It's easier in person, but we were forced to do during COVID is adopt different ways to use data to communicate. And I think now for us is the opportunity to how do we use both. As we come out of COVID, how do we keep up some of those really good practices that we've developed, and perhaps that were seen as being not possible prior or not useful, and then how do we blend them now into being in person, and a combination of those things. And I think comes back again, Leslie, to your point around the goals. And so what are the goals of the business? And then what are the goals of the people, and using the data to fast track that understanding and knowledge on what the outcomes are, and being able to use the data to look ahead and educate quicker, and get to a point of fast tracking education with key people, or getting to a point of understanding that it's maybe there's not a way forward, and maybe that they'd be better doing something else, and someone else joining who could align more with what the goals of the business were. But it's really, I think it comes back to the people. There's no silver bullet. We're still learning how to utilize data and create curiosity, but it really always comes back to aligned goals.
That's a great point about aligning goals, because having an understanding of how your personal ambitions and interests and your personal skills fit into a bigger picture can actually, I think, help people a lot in developing a sort of a team sense and an organizational culture of analytics. I'm wondering, Fred, if in your business, which I suspect is, you're dealing with some very individualistic people, how do you align people around shared goals and values when it comes to data analysis? Is that even possible in your business?
Yeah, for the most part, it quite is, because most folks are in a marketing team are working on the same project at one given point in time. But there's also, there's also so many different areas of the business that we can touch on with a lot of this data. And the way and actually just going back to, I think, Kayla's question on how to motivate someone to start using a lot of this, using data and analytics in their own practice, is breaking it down to a single use case. And the way to do that, at least the way that I've had the most success, is not by starting and saying, hey, here's a report, here's a dashboard, and then here's how to use it, but rather speaking their language and going, okay, let's take a look at an example. In my case, that would be an artist. Let's take a look at Billie Eilish and see and start there, go to, some analytics on her records and start, talking about how, certain records are working in different markets, as opposed to saying, hey, here's a tool, you can filter by this, you can get this information there, which I found to be a lot more successful, coming from the, the perspective of the individual that you're working with.
That's super interesting. I think the idea that the individuals have perspectives that you have to understand when you're developing the data solutions that they will work with is, I think, the idea that there's a one-size-fits-all data solution to a certain extent troubles me, and I think the work that we've seen Domo doing in particular in terms of being able to personalize analytics, I think is probably very important in that aspect. Leslie, we've all kind of come back to your comments. They were really kind of resonated with people. One of the other questions that I have on the in the chat panel is super interesting in connection with this, because somebody was asking about, in effect, they were asking about the quality of data. That how do you encourage, to improve the quality of data? The decisions that you make, if they're data driven, are only going to be as good as the data that's input to the system. And very often, data analysts, business intelligence analysts, are somewhat downstream from that data collection process. And when you think about this in terms of people doing their personal work, and we've talked quite a lot about self-service, how does a self-service analyst, and especially if they were in a management role, not a technical role, how do they understand data quality, and how can they use their curiosity and their influence in their role to improve the data experience in an organization? Or is that something that they have to pass down the line to somebody else?
I really think that both of these questions actually tie in together, because when I saw the first question and as we were discussing, I really started to think this is more of a collaboration opportunity. And if you work for a company that has a lot of cross-functionality, where maybe there is a department and something that they do really impacts your department, or something that you do then in turn impacts a different department, really getting leaders together, especially, and having those conversations, not only will it encourage the collaboration, because, and going back to the first question, in a lot of cases, the reason that people are uncomfortable with data or don't want to use it is because maybe it takes them a while to find what they're looking for, or they don't understand how that data will then in turn impact behaviors, or how to even execute that or apply that or hold people accountable. So I really think that both things tie in together. And so I really personally feel, but I am definitely more of a hands-on leader, and everyone has their own leadership style, but this is something that I would definitely want to jump into myself and to really become familiar with if I had new data sets that I was unsure about or how I could use them. To me, the first thing that a person could do to really better understand even how to narrow that data down is just to reach out and collaborate with people. And I know that Gonzalo mentioned silos and breaking down silos, and this is another great example of that as well, is if we're running a department, especially in leadership, and if it's performance-based, like most of our data and analytics are to measure our performance, we really need to understand what we're doing and how that's impacting other parts of our business. And so I think it's a twofold response there. It's really just all about collaborating and becoming more familiar. The more we do something, the easier it becomes. And so for my leaders, time savers is a huge focus for us. So anything that will save time is really something that we're going to go after with a lot of passion. And one thing that we found is that when you get people together and they're discussing data on a Zoom call even, or whether it's in person or whatever the case may be, one person inevitably is going to ask a question that the other person never thought of, but they'll be so glad that it got addressed. And then they'll go in turn and use it immediately with their teams. And so I've seen so many examples of that happen over the years. So I know that just getting people together a lot of times will really encourage that type of a cultural environment, which also always leads back to behavior.
It's so interesting that you bring up the topic of collaboration, because it does seem to be critical, and yet when our subject is curiosity, we think of curiosity as being a personal thing, but collaborative curiosity is maybe a sort of goal that we should all aim for. Gonzalo, when you were talking about kind of breaking down silos, I think we were talking about breaking down data silos and technical silos. I expect there's organizational silos, there's silos of people that we also have to break down, yeah, in order to collaborate more effectively.
Oh, absolutely. And the interesting thing is that it's an all-rounded effect. You start bringing data to the table, and when you start seeing people agreeing, okay, well, in certain facts, then you start understanding, okay, well, yeah, we can agree. We can start finding common ground. We can start agreeing, okay, well, yeah, this is actually correct. And having people in different parts of the organization with different KPIs, different goals, to agree on working together sometimes is not easy. But if you start saying, okay, well, these facts that we have found actually help us achieve the large goal of the organization, then you can start agreeing. You can start working towards a common goal. And it's interesting because sometimes and I think pretty much everyone we're on the same page, that you start identifying things that you didn't know. So you don't know what you don't know until you start scratching the surface. You start identifying, okay, new ways, new things that you thought that they were actually the key drivers of your business. But the key driver of your business is actually held by a number of different layers of admin tasks that you need to support, the different layers of skill sets that you have to have in order to achieve certain outcomes, and also certain processes that have not been reviewed for a number of years, for example. And when you start putting all the data together, you start identifying, well, actually, yeah, we see that if we start cross-training people, if we start reviewing this process that has not been touching for quite some time, then you start identify, okay, well, yeah, this is actually going to work. And sometimes talking the same language, sometimes different parts of the organization talk about call things one way, we call it in a different way because of it's actually convenient, because we have two different customers that have different requirements. But if you don't talk together, sometimes when you start doing analysis, you come to the wrong conclusion because you haven't integrated every single customer that is on a similar situation. So having, sorry. Yeah.
No, sorry, I was just going to say, so collaboration isn't just a good thing to do.
So, exactly. So having that, having an open mind approach in a collaborative approach is absolutely critical.
Yeah, no, so the collaboration becomes, it's actually the different perspectives are needed to get a full understanding of the bigger picture of the business. That seems really important. And Nigel, in your world, as you were talking about encouraging people to engage more with the data, is this collaborative approach, is that possible in your business? And have you tried it? Has it been helpful?
We're at the start of our journey, in terms of data, but I think there's been I mentioned earlier on, there's been such an explosion of data and availability of data and all different aspects of agriculture that it's probably overpowering, and so then bringing it back to key objectives. And I think in agriculture there's an opportunity to break down intergenerational views which may have been passed down through the forefathers before on why things are done, but it's actually bringing those things to the surface and simplifying that, and fast tracking that learning. If people respond to information is empowering, and they respond to that, and if agriculture can be siloed in terms of sites and communication flow, but data can break them down. So collaboration is critical.
Gosh, I like the idea of kind of intergenerational collaboration. That's something which is probably fairly unique,
It
actually,
may
in
not be
the
factual.
agricultural business. I'm not sure that a business that's as trend-setting as, say, Fred's music business is going to have much intergenerational collaboration. But Fred, what about the role of collaboration in your business? And I mean, the idea of collaborative curiosity almost feels like a almost not quite a contradiction in terms, but certainly it's a little surprising because we think of curiosity as being a personal quality rather than an organizational quality. Can we encourage a curious organization, a collaboratively curious organization?
Oh yeah, I think we absolutely can. And in my company, where that comes into play is, we're trying to often line up a lot of different aspects, whether it's aspects of certain artist business all at the same time, and which typically requires departments, a lot of folks who work in different departments to kind of speak that common language and to agree on, when to do certain things and how to do them, whether it's as simple as an album, album artwork, and when that gets delivered and how that then works in the entire chain of delivering marketing and listening to music. And so what we can then do with a lot of this analytics is have a common place that people can speak to the point where I've seen in some massive marketing meetings with over 100 people, just
Wow.
A Domo card on the page, and people are clicking and filtering to ask questions and to understand what's happening so that they can better plan a lot of these releases.
I think that might be some kind of record. 100 people collaborating on a single Domo card is
Yeah.
something. I'd love to see that meeting in action. We're kind of getting towards the end of our time, and I'd like to maybe just wrap up with a simple question. But let's see if we can, just be somewhat brief in our answers, if you don't mind, so we can get everyone's opinion. But as we think about the role of curiosity in the business, what's next for your business in terms of making this a reality and making it an important part of your work? Leslie, do you have a thought on that?
Absolutely. So we focus so much on our leaders understanding data and really going to their teams and using that behaviorally. We've been talking about that this entire panel, extremely important. But for me, what I would love to see is that to cascade to the rest of my store teams, for example. So to really get them passionate about the same things that our leaders have really been focusing on over these last several years. Really, the personal accountability is where we need to be, because our associates are extraordinarily professional and very talented, manage their own business, and we do count on them to be a personal business owner, so to speak. And so to really just take this data curiosity mindset that our leaders now have and really help all of our associates experience the same level of understanding. And after they're able to get to that point, then I really look to see them become even more successful.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. And Nigel, what's the next step in your curiosity journey?
Look, it's similar. It's taking, what we know our investors need to hear, what we want to hear, and how to improve our business performance. And then it's bringing it down to the rest of the team and making it relevant and straightforward and something they can understand and grab onto as a starting point. And that may be different at the different sites. So it's back to that, probably weaving in that personal goals and drivers into that.
Sure. Great. Thank you. And Gonzalo, next steps for you in making this a reality?
Look, generally speaking, so in the organization, you see different departments in different stages of the data curiosity journey. The main thing to answer actually one of the questions that is in the chat is engagement means commitment. So you want to have the people that into the data that helping you driving the right reports, data quality. You need to engage them. You need to let them understand what's happening and why the data integrity is important. So that definitely is one. For the departments that have already advanced and they have progressed, probably the next step is actually helping them understanding, okay, well, how can we use the data curiosity not to just go back in the past, but actually to start predicting what's happening next. So that's probably the
predictive step is always an interesting one. Fred, can you predict what's next for you in your curiosity journey?
Yeah, because I think we're towards the tail end of that, because I think, just to echo something Nigel pointed out, is we've had an explosion of access to information over the past few years, because we weren't, initially a data forward company. In fact, we moved from, very intuitive method of working to combining intuition with data, where data is actually secondary, but oftentimes, very validating of what our intuitions are. And to the point where actually where we are in our curiosity journey is taking all that information, actually simplifying it, because there's dozens up to hundreds of different ways we can evaluate, a simple question like, how much do people like a certain song versus another one?
Right.
But we want to now condense that to make it a lot simpler for folks all over our company, to work with that information and not to get overwhelmed with the sheer volume that's available to them.
I think simplicity is actually going to be a very important part of all the work that we do, making these things not necessarily easier, but simpler, because this is a fascinating process. I want to thank you all for your time today. I feel I should especially thank our guests from Australia for getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning or earlier to do this. But really, it's been a great conversation. All of us have had, I think, some really fantastic perspectives that people can take away, and we can tell from the chat that it's been very engaging for people. So thank you very much for your time and for your input and for sharing your experiences in such an open and innovative and creative way. Thank you so much, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the conference.